Now we start in West Asia this hour, and after a damning report by a UN-backed food security body, Israel's foreign ministry said there is no famine in Gaza. The report strongly opposes this and says it confirms a famine in Gaza City and its surrounding areas. It claims that 514,000 people, nearly a quarter of Gaza's population, are facing famine. This is expected to rise to 641,000 by the month of September. The Integrated Food Security Phase classification defines famine as at least 20% of people suffering extreme food shortages, 1 in 3 children acutely malnourished, and 2 out of every 10,000 dying daily from starvation or disease. The UN spokesperson, Jeremy Lawrence, said it is a war crime to use starvation as a method of warfare. He added that the resulting deaths may also amount to the war crime of willful killing. Let's listen in to the UN spokesperson, Jeremy Lawrence.
It is a war crime to use starvation as a method of warfare, and the resulting deaths may also amount to the war crime of willful killing. The Israeli authorities must take immediate steps to end the famine in the Gaza Governorate and prevent further loss of life across the Gaza Strip. They must ensure immediate entry of humanitarian assistance in sufficient amounts and full access to UN and other humanitarian organisations.
Meanwhile, Israel's defense minister has warned that Gaza City could be destroyed if Hamas does not disarm and release all hostages. The comments followed approval of a massive assault on the city despite international opposition. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said negotiations for the release of all the hostages will begin immediately, stressing that defeating Hamas and freeing hostages go hand in hand. The IDF has warned of a possible evacuation of 1 million residents south, while the UN warns of high civilian casualties and further humanitarian crisis amid ongoing famine in Gaza. We're now joined by Peter Baum, who is the foreign editor of the Weekly Blitz. He joins us to discuss this, and he joins us live from London. Peter, thank you very much for joining us. Peter, as we've said, a damning report coming out of the United Nations just an hour ago. Over 500,000 people in the Strip are starving, according to the IPC, this UN-backed food security body. Antonio Guterres, the UN chief, has said it is a failure on humanity, what is going on in the Gaza Strip right now. Israel has denied that there is a famine in Gaza. How can Israel deny this when so many neutral humanitarian organizations are calling for Israel to allow unrestricted aid in to prevent what is going on in the Gaza Strip? We have all seen photos of malnourished children flood social media, flood mainstream media, in fact, now. How can Israel respond to this?
Quite easily, Thomas. First of all, you use the adjective neutral UN organisations. They're not neutral. They're very biased. There's an anti-Israel lobby that runs the UN at the moment, and those organisations are not neutral. We saw very recently the reports that Israel was not letting sufficient aid into Gaza, when in fact the United Nations analysis of 3,000 lorries was proved to be fake. It was in fact 9,000 lorries of aid. We saw at the very beginning of the war the UN state that there were no functioning hospitals in Gaza, when 18 months through the war there are still functioning hospitals in Gaza. We've never seen a starving Hamas operative. We've never seen a starving Al Jazeera journalist working from Gaza, and those surrounding that journalist, the people, they're not starving. So the continuing demonisation of Israel from impartial bad faith actors will continue. I've been in touch with people from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation today. Do you know how many meals are being distributed to Gaza? That hasn't been reported by the UN. No, Thomas, we will continue to see this demonisation of Israel. There is no famine in Gaza. I state that to you and your viewers and everyone else who is listening, but we will continue to see demonisation of Israel through bad faith actors in the UN. And why? And we've been through this before, Thomas. It's because we can see that the business model of UNRWA and the bad faith actors is falling apart. The Gazans will continue to be fed through the GHF, and I must say other organisations are now joining them. But running parallel with this, we will see continuous demonisation of Israel through mainstream media and pictures of malnourished children who in fact are pictures of children with other chronic illnesses, and some of the pictures are actually from Yemeni, going through mainstream media, are actually from children in Yemen and Sudan. So I dare say a week from now, Thomas, another UN report will come forward demonising Israel. But what's going on the ground in reality is a very far cry from what the mainstream media are reporting. And that's why mainstream media these days is not trusted, and their viewing audience is on a downward trajectory.
Peter, you mentioned, of course, that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a highly controversial organisation which has been known to kill people while distributing aid, according to the UN, once again. Nearly 2,000 people have now been killed since May. Also, the reason why that we can't check these numbers independently is there is no international journalists still being let into the Gaza Strip in order to check these figures. The World Health Organization, of course, has also said that the Gaza hunger is, quote, spiraling out of control. A coalition of 14 major organizations in February, they all raised alarms about the hunger situation in the Gaza Strip. There has been, of course, that press conference by Benjamin Netanyahu where he gave those images of those 3 children where he said they were all fake. How can people looking from the outside in trust Israel and their information when they do not allow independent investigation into the Gaza Strip to check these facts?
This is a balancing act. Even if Israel did allow independent journalists into the Gaza Strip, and don't forget, Thomas, we here in the UK don't allow independent journalists into London. We've banned people such as Press TV and RT TV, and the Arab nations themselves have banned Al Jazeera. Israel is not alone in allowing which journalists they want in and which they don't. But the demonisation of Israel via the United Nations has been an ongoing process. You've only got to look at the resolutions passed against Israel in the UN prior to October the 7th, which is as a multiple 15 times more than any resolutions of all the other United Nations together. So I think the question, Thomas, for all journalists really wanting to understand what's going on in Israel and the Palestinian territories is to establish why the UN has for decades been on this demonisation of Israel, this total negativity and this kind of pro-Palestinian support, bearing in mind the Palestinian charters, both of which seek to exterminate Jews. That's the real question, not the continuous propaganda spewed out by these UN NGOs who really have no credibility whatsoever. I would be supportive of listening to the Israeli government every day of the week rather than an NGO.
Peter Baum, thank you very much for joining us. We will, of course, bring you
My pleasure.
all updates